Crypto hasn't been pretty recently. Everything went down, there was a massive deleveraging event, but ZCash or ZEC was able to withstand. Now why is that? Let's have a look at the on-chain metrics, the data most people aren't considering. Let's try to figure out whether or not it still makes sense to buy ZCash. Here is the crash that everybody witnessed. It wiped out pretty much everybody that was betting on crypto with leverage. This shows the market cap of all of the altcoins that are not in the top 10. This went down by 48%. But compare this chart with the ZCash chart. Yes, we did have some volatility as well, but we did recover very, very quickly. Now, this is not the first video on ZCash on this channel. I publish videos on the asset regularly. The last one came out just 10 days ago. And at the time, the price was $122. And now, even after the crash, after everything went down, we are at $277. I publish videos on various altcoins regularly on this channel, so feel free to subscribe over here to not miss the next one. Now, I always like to look at relative valuations because there's so much correlation within crypto. When Bitcoin goes up, then most other altcoins go up as well. When Bitcoin crashes, it takes the altcoins with it. So really what we're interested in is relative performance. How is an altcoin doing relative to Bitcoin, relative to Ethereum, or just relative to the rest of the altcoin market? What you see over here is the ZCash price relative to the others market cap. So the market cap of the altcoins that are not in the top 10. ZCash was highly inflationary in the early days. So there's one more tokens hitting the market. Now the inflation rate went down quite a bit. But because of that initial inflation, we saw an underperformance of ZCash versus all other altcoins of 95%. Just have a look at this. The market cap of ZCash is at an all-time high, very close to 5 billion. The price, however, is not close to an all-time high. And it's all just because of the additional supply that has hit the market in the meantime. Had there been zero supply expansion, ZCash might now be even above $1,000. Now let's have a look at the on-chain metrics. There is a ported version of ZCash on the Binance Smart Chain. And 13,671 wallets hold that ported version. We see that over time there's more and more new users entering the token. We can also see how the existing users continue to trade ZCash. This is a 1-month chart, and we can see that over time the ratio of new users versus returning users tends to go up. We also see how the numbers of buyers and sellers tends to grow over time. Again, this is all Binance Smart Chain data. And while all of this looks very bullish, we have to stay objective. What we see over here is not that great. On the left side, we see the number of retail investors, so the number of wallets that hold at least 4 ZCash tokens, which is roughly $1,000 worth of the token. In the middle, it's $10,000 worth of the token. On the right, it's $100,000 worth of the token. So let me get my face out of the way. We can see how the number of retail investors shot up recently. But the number of medium-sized investors went down, and the number of whales also went down. So literally what we currently witness is how the whales are dumping on the retail investor. The whales are taking advantage of this elevated price, and the average retail investor is getting excited. This is by no means a rally that's driven just by leverage, just by the perpetual futures, because what we actually saw with the deleveraging event recently, with the crash, is that most of the open interest for most cryptocurrencies got wiped out. We didn't see that for ZCash, as in the funding rate never turned strongly negative, rather the opposite. It turned positive, so there were more longs than shorts, even though we saw more long liquidations. The open interest for ZCash is at an all-time high. This is very different for other cryptocurrencies. And here's the problem. When we look at this on a longer time frame, when we zoom out and we compare this with the ZCash price, there is correlation between open interest and price. When there are a lot of bets on an asset, the spot price tends to be high. When there are less bets on an asset, the spot price tends to be low. And currently we are extremely high in open interest, showing the potential for a future decline in the price. There is a case to be made that Binance is currently artificially pushing up the price of ZCash. Most trading volume on the perpetual futures happens on Binance. It's 1.34 billion. It's much larger than MEXC or Bybit or Hyperliquid, etc. But have a look at what happened with the majority of Binance tokens during that crash. Here's an overview of various categories within crypto in the last week. It's ordered by the worst performers, and the top is Binance related. Number 2 is Pump Fun, 3rd is Binance related, 4th is Binance related, and number 6 is Binance related as well. And even Pump.Fun could be argued that it's now mainly in the hands of Binance. Because have a look at the top tokens on Pump.Fun, Fartcoin and Peanut. Most perp trading volume of Fartcoin happens on Binance. Most perp trading volume of Peanut happens on Binance as well. So really, I don't think that this ZCash rally is necessarily driven by news. There are no big news. You can now buy a VPN using ZCash, and that was an announcement made more than 1 week ago. But really, that doesn't justify a rally of this magnitude. Really, I do believe that this is price manipulation, that at some point this will turn around. Maybe we should now treat ZCash the same way we treat any Binance-related meme coin. It simply just pumps to then subsequently dump. But how high can those meme coins on average pump until we see the reversal? ZCash currently has a market cap of 4.5 billion. Fartcoin historically turned around at already 2.1 billion. Peanut turned around at 1.8 billion. Here's Putty Penguins, that turned around at 2.7 billion. Here's SPX 6900, a turnaround at 2 billion. And here we've got Bonk, that turned around at 4 billion. So yes, ZCash is not a meme coin, but ZCash also doesn't get used that much. And it is already at 5 billion and Binance has a very close grip on the price. To me, it looks like a reversal is overdue. I do not think that ZCash will suddenly hit 10, 15 or 20 billion in market cap. The all-time high of ZCash relative to the rest of the altcoin market is still a 70% gain away from here. And I'm not saying that the asset will crash tomorrow. I just think that currently it's comparatively expensive already and that a potential deleveraging is very much on the cards. What goes up quickly tends to come down after a while. And we have seen several pump and dumps in ZCash in the past as well. This is just another magnitude, but it's a repetition of the same story yet again. Now, I try to be as objective and as realistic as possible on this channel. I try to not just sell the greed, talk about 100 or 1000x cryptocurrencies where then in the end, most people end up losing their money. This is what I don't like about the crypto space, especially on YouTube. Here is a possible 100x crypto, or over here, Plasma going to the moon with 100x, or here even a ranking from 10x all the way to 1000x. The problem is that most people get burnt with content like this. They're hoping for the 100x, they put in all of their savings and then that money is gone. Here's the sad reality. The vast majority of altcoins is just going down all the time. This is an overview of smaller altcoins and their performance in the last year. The reason for the underperformance is because insiders and early investors and the team, they get token allocations over time, and that increases the supply. And the price is a result of supply and demand. And when the supply is just going up all the time and the demand cannot catch up, which is true in the vast majority of cases because of ever increasing competition and because our supply unlocks are also so extremely aggressive. Because of that effect, that's then the reality. That's why most altcoins do worse compared to Bitcoin. So this is an example of DYDX. That's this chart over here, right? The supply development. This is DYDX relative to the Bitcoin price. This is not pretty, right? This is an underperformance of 99%. And while it might not always end up with minus 99%, many altcoins still end up losing. Owning a diversified portfolio of assets where the insiders cash out all the time is a bad idea. But it's a good idea to do the exact opposite. So instead of buying DYDX in this example, we can do this here. This is now the Bitcoin performance relative to DYDX. So we bet on rising prices of Bitcoin and at falling prices of DYDX at the same time. So in this example, since the beginning of the year, that made 210%. The performance over the last 2 years is plus 1,300%. So this is where we can find the 10x returns, or at least the outperformance over just buying and holding Bitcoin. We want to work with the market structure. The market structure is against the retail investor more often than not. Again, most altcoins tend to do worse than Bitcoin and Ethereum most of the time. And we don't even have to be afraid of so-called altcoin season, right? When the others' dominance went up by 67%, at the same time, this relative valuation still didn't go up. So the others' dominance is just a measure of market caps. It's not a measure of price developments. And when market caps stay stagnant because the price gets cut in half while the supply doubles, this is not reflected in the typical altcoin performance charts. I've been following this strategy for the last 4 years. So this is a monthly return chart. Had I just dollar cost averaged into Bitcoin, I would have gotten the line in gray. But because I also bet on falling altcoin prices, I got the return in black. And this is really how we make money in crypto. It's not about finding the next altcoin. It's not about hitting a home run. It's about long-term compounding capital faster than the average. It's about being on the same side as the small circle of insiders. Basically flipping this chart around. Everything that's red here becomes green. Everything that's green becomes red. So the vast majority of our trades end up winning. The strategy might not be as straightforward as just buying an altcoin, but it's also not too complicated. There's only 2 videos that are really important. It's this one over here, using perpetual futures to bet on relative valuations. And it's this one over here, probably even more important, risk management with relative valuation bets. The first video is 34 minutes. The second video is 28 minutes. Once you've watched those 2 videos, you know exactly what to do in order to get this kind of performance. And I'm so certain in the strategy that I will send you my favorite trade directly after joining the premium membership here. So you will get my favorite trade. And if that favorite trade is not making money in a span of 1 month, so you're holding that trade for 1 month. If you're not in the green with that trade after 1 month, then I will refund you the membership fee. So really, you are not risking anything. After joining, once you've watched the 2 videos and you've opened the trade that I will share with you, and you are not making money, you just get the $125 back. If you do make money, of course, that's great. Then you can just continue copy trading me. I share every single trade in real time in premium as well. A link to premium pops up directly here on the screen. Just click on that. It will lead you to the website. If it's your very first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish this regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time on YouTube or see you in premium. Cheers.